Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next free construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots in deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the IREL podcast. I am your host, Taylor White. We have an absolutely special show today with Mike Sager from Ecuador Properties in Playas, Ecuador, and we'll get down and dirty with the Playas real estate scene and have you coming away wanting to investigate its local property market further or cross it off your shortlist entirely and continue listening. Right now from Mike, you will learn the one thing that was screaming at him to make a change and how he turned it into owning not one, not two, but 3 beachfront properties in Ecuador. The exact reasons why in neighboring countries he only had acquaintances, or in Ecuador his life is full of amazing friends. Why Mike recommends it's a great idea to follow the money and gives exact locations on where that is and reasons why it makes sense. The latest up-to-the-minute information on if transferring money in and out of Ecuador is even a possibility, and the one new Ecuadorian update you must know. A brand new strategy to hold money you wired down for a property purchase that pays up to 6% just sitting there, and much more. And don't forget, if you are listening to this podcast and want to grab Mike's contact details, links on buying or selling Playas real estate, or any other show notes, head on over to irelpodcast.com/4. That's irelpodcast.com/4. Hold on to your headphones. Mike's about ready to literally blow your mind with on-the-ground insight. In case you can't tell, I'm excited. Let's get Mike on the phone. Hey, Mike, it's Taylor White. I'm excited to have you on the IREL podcast today, straight from Playas, Ecuador. So we can get to know you personally. Tell us about yourself and where your stomping grounds were before you ended up in Playas.
Good morning, Taylor. It's good to be on your show. I'm looking forward to it. I'm originally from Southern California. I grew up in Huntington Beach, so I've definitely been a beach boy from day one. I had a buddy that used to live down in Huntington Beach, and we went to the beach literally every day of the summer. So I was looking for something like that to replace, what I'd lost in the past. In 1978, I moved up to Washington State, where I lived most of my adult life, and I had numerous careers there. And then in 2005, I moved full-time to Ecuador. So I've been here for a little over 8 years now. It's been a great place to live. I love it.
Oh, wow, Mike. I was actually born and raised in Southern California as well. So I can definitely see how you ended up beachside in Ecuador. And so we can get a better idea of you professionally, give us your brief resume leading up to working at Ecuador Properties.
Okay. Well, I've had numerous careers. So I used to think people that jump from job to job were sort of flaky. But then I realized that, it was on to the next adventure for me. I had a very diverse path of jobs and careers. So one of the first things I did in the past was I was a produce manager for a large chain in Southern California. Then I actually was a mailman, and I left there just before I started to go postal. I used to joke with the manager. I go, don't you guys understand why people get tired of working for you? And it was amazing. So after that job, I was fortunate to go into an investment firm. And I had my securities license. I was an investment broker, a stock broker, and that was a huge career that woke me up as to what people need to do for themselves as well as for myself. I learned so much in there in the financial world, what was going to happen in the future, and it was probably one of my favorite careers. But it wasn't my last career. So after that, I went into actually owning businesses, and I've had everything from a music store up to my real estate company that I have now here in Ecuador.
Oh, wow. Great, Mike. We love that detailed background. Now, we are getting more familiar with who you are both on a personal and professional level. Let's start to dig into your journey just a little bit. Take us back to your mindset. What were some of the reasons why you decided to look at other countries to begin with years ago? And then maybe which countries you were considering before finally choosing Ecuador?
Okay, like I said, I was extremely fortunate in that I was in the industry, the financial world, that was screaming to me, get out while you can. I saw that the U.S. was coming to an end of being the greatest country in the world. It was more or less the writing was on the wall as to the financial meltdown that lay ahead. And like I said, I saw this actually about 10 years ago. So I made a decision 15 years ago that I wanted to live outside of the state. So the financial thing just sort of really firmed up that you need to get out as quick as you can. And I couldn't afford, to even rent a frontline home in Huntington Beach, much less buy one. So here, I've been fortunate. I own not one, but I own 3 beach homes. And I checked out, before coming to Ecuador, I checked out Mexico, Central America, and a fair part of South America as well. And Ecuador just kept coming to the top. It was the cream on the milk. It just kept coming to the top. And that's how I ended up here in Ecuador.
Well, Mike, listeners and I are always fascinated to learn about which countries people have considered and why. Now, let's delve deeper into Ecuador as a whole, and then why you chose Playas in particular versus other popular Ecuadorian locations like Cotacachi and Cuenca.
Okay, well, Ecuador came up on the radar screen for me about 9 years ago. I read a report on Ecuador and had never even given it thought previously. But the more I read, the more I was determined to go and see it for myself. Now, Cotacachi and Cuenca, they're both they're in the mountains, they're in the Andes. And even though it's a beautiful area, it's definitely not the beach. So like I said earlier, I'm a beach boy. So Cotacachi and Cuenca, I visit them, lovely places to be, but a little cold at night. So I decided I'd come back to the beach. And when I did that, that was the best thing I ever did. Ecuador outshined both Costa Rica and Panama for numerous reasons. I found everything I'd been searching for and more in Ecuador. The weather here is wonderful. It's not hot and sticky like you would think being on the equator. Most people take the word equator and equate that it has to be the hottest and most humid place in the world, and that is not true. It's beautiful. The weather here is very much like Southern California where I grew up. And the people are really warm and inviting. Like I made friends here instantly where in Costa Rica and Panama, I made acquaintances there. So the social end of it here is much, much better in my opinion. The cost of living cannot be touched by any Latin American country. And the all-important affordable beachfront properties, well, they're here, and there's tons of them. There's places you can get all up and down the coast. You can pick the type of coast you'd like to be on, whether it's rocky terrain on the beach or sandy stretches of beach. It's incredible. And then after living on numerous beaches over the last 8 years, I finally discovered the best beach in Ecuador as to weather, prices, and room for negotiation and appreciation, and the great people. I found Playas. And this is truly a hidden gem in that it's the closest beach to the international airport. And that's the airport in Guayaquil, not in Quito. It's the sunniest beach in all of Ecuador, and it's the longest and most easily accessed beach in Ecuador. And Guayaquil is pumping over $60 million into this. And that's one of the things that caught my attention, is the old term follow the money. So Playas is not perfect yet, but it's being funded and pushed by the big money in Guayaquil, which brings new investors and more tourism. And there's much, much more ahead for Playas.
Well, Mike, I have traveled a bit in Cotacachi, Quito, Cuenca, Montanita, with a quick jaunt through Guayaquil, so I have firsthand knowledge what you're referring to. And through my travels, I am a firm believer in that I either get a place or I don't. Share with us some reasons why Playas speaks to you.
Well, once again, there's a number of reasons, but I'll touch on a few. Most of us, like I said earlier, have heard this old saying, follow the money. Well, the money is being pumped into Playas. As I mentioned before, Guayaquil has more than $60 million being injected into infrastructure, tourism, real estate sector, and making the beachfront bigger and better. And since it's only 1 hour from Guayaquil, it beats out Salinas by 45 minutes, so it's just a faster place to get to. And for now, Playas is still geared to it's more or less geared to lower middle income families at Guayaquil. So beer on the beach, ceviche, fresh seafood, lunches, dinners will not wipe out your pocketbook at the end of the day. And I go down to one of my favorite beach restaurants here, and for $2.50, I have not a snack, but I have an entire meal. You get this delicious bowl of soup, which is a meal in itself, a main dish with seafood, rice, salad, and patacones. And patacones are what I call the Ecuadorian French fry. It's actually a plantain. It's a banana, but it's not sweet, and it tastes like a French fry. And you get a fresh glass of juice. It's incredible. And you get all that for $2.50. And then the beach really reminds me of Huntington Beach, California, where I grew up. It has long stretches of beach, good surfing, there's restaurants, there's smiling faces on the beach, and that wonderful sunshine that makes its appearance practically every day of the year. Playas is touted as being the sunniest beach. because it has 320 days of sunshine per year.
Well, Mike, we have gotten to know you both personally and professionally, reasons why you chose Ecuador and why Playa speaks to you. But get ready, because now it's time for us to pick your brain on the local real estate scene. And to get the juices flowing, we're going to do a quick round of what I like to call the real estate hot seat. We'll ask you 5 rapid-fire questions, and you give me an answer in 15 seconds or less each. Mike, are you ready for the Playas hot seat?
All right, buddy, turn it up. Let's do it.
All right. What currency is real estate priced in?
This is great. It is the U.S. dollar. That's the currency that's used here in Ecuador, so there's no conversions needed here. You spend a buck, you get a buck's value.
Is owning property as a foreigner legal?
Oh, absolutely. This might be the best country in Latin America for a foreigner to buy property. You have every right that is given to an Ecuadorian that buys land here. There's no different taxation. There's no fear of losing your land to a tyrant. You can't say that about the U.S. I'll stop there. But I do know of Americans that have lost land in the USA, and I know of no one that has lost land to the Ecuadorian government here. And to me, that's very important, because a lot of people ask that question. And I just say, hey, can you say eminent domain? Where I do know of Americans that have lost property and may be compensated for it, but not fairly compensated. So here in Ecuador, I've never heard of anyone losing property to the government.
Can property be titled?
Yeah, it's just like in the States. You have a private title piece of property when buying in Ecuador. But there is one caveat here. There are some properties that are called comuna. And when you have a comuna title, what you have is the community owns that particular piece of property, and you have rights of use, but not rights of ownership. So we avoid those properties because there are plenty of privately titled beachfront lots, homes, and condos here in the country.
Can money flow in and out of Ecuador easily, or are there currency restrictions?
Yes, it can, but just recently they've initiated a 5% exit tax on money being wired out of the country. Now, you can carry up to $10,000 on your person and not incur that tax. And what many people don't know is that America is getting ready to impose a much bigger hit than that on the money exiting that country, and that'll be implemented soon. But here it's just a 5% exit tax. So, for an example, you took if you wired $1,000 to someone, $50 of that would be held back by the banks.
And as listeners know, my number one question, what is your favorite local drink?
Well, I tell you what, I love getting an ice cold coconut on the roadside and drink the milk while I'm traveling. There's tons of these little booths, and they sell coconuts, and what they do is they chill them. And it's a little bit green, because then that's when there's the most milk. And they cut the top off that baby, stick a straw into it, and it is excellent. But there's also a really good beer for those beer drinkers out there. There's an excellent beer for a 22-ounce bottle. It's $1.50 on the beach.
Oh, wow. Sounds delicious.
It's good.
Okay, Mike, you can now relax, but just a little bit, as you are off the Playas hot seat. But it's time to zero in on the local real estate scene. Give us your brief synopsis on the Playas real estate market over the last few years, where it is today, and then where you see it heading for the next few years.
Okay. Playas is truly on the verge of an explosion, and very few people know that. I've been fortunate over the past 8 years to be on the right stretch of beach at the right time, and that it has happened again for me in Playas. I got to Playas a couple of years back and found some great deals for clients and a few for myself. The good news is there's still plenty of upside ahead for anyone wishing to get in now. I'm still buying land here and plan on doing so for at least the next 2 to 3 years minimum. And it goes back to what I said earlier. Follow the money. The roadway into Playas was a terrible road just a couple of years ago, and it is now a beautiful 4-lane divided highway and one of the nicest roads in the country. And that was due to the money coming in from Guayaquil, the province. Then they just opened up a brand new community hospital as you enter town. There's a brand new on-beach mall that opened in March of this year, which is amazing, because the mall is probably the only mall in South America that is literally on the beach. As you're sitting in the food court, you're overlooking the sand and the waves. And that's amazing, because there's nothing else like it. And then there's a huge project that is projected for just outside Playas, and this will be what is called a game changer. I'll expand a little bit. I can't give you too much information because I'm actually in on the marketing of this. But there's going to be $700 million put into a gated resort community on the beach of just outside Playas, and there's nothing like it in the country yet. So that is going to be a huge change how this country is viewed from outside people coming in and looking, okay, Ecuador is going to be high on the list for tourism here in the next few years.
Wow, Mike, you have us sold on Ecuador as a country, Playas as a city, and then its real estate outlook within the near future. Of course, you don't have a crystal ball. I sure as heck don't. No one does. But that is why I think it's so vitally important to get on-the-ground insight from local real estate professionals. And yes, I just used the words local and on-the-ground in the same sentence to drive home a very important fact. Mike, you are not some newsletter writer who might spend a few days in Playas and then send out emails with hot buys, calling yourself an international real estate guru. You are there in the trenches on a daily basis, dealing with local buyers, sellers, agents, lawyers, and every facet of the real estate business. Mike, break this down even further for us. Pretend you are Google Maps or Google Street View. What streets, neighborhoods, or parts of the city are we talking about in Playas?
Okay, good question. Okay, in most all of Ecuador's coast, you'll find the streets that are immediately in front of the beach to be the best in appearance and typically the best investment properties. Then once you go back a few blocks, you're back in the typical, Ecuadorian neighbor home with simple homes. So in Playas, the Malecón or the boardwalk is the place to be for a person who wants to be in the middle of the action. And that's where you can do great business. If you had a hotel or B&B, you'd have excellent chance for a lot of traffic there. And then you take a little trip either north or south out of town, and you'll find these long stretches of beach with individual homes or gated communities. These locations have great value to a person wishing to be close to the action, but not in the middle of it. So you have miles and miles of coastline that fall in this category. So you either have, the town city type feel or the suburbs, and it's all good.
Okay, Mike, now that we have specific locations in mind, what types of properties do you recommend? And first, let me give you a few brief examples of what I mean. Are we talking about buying pre-construction units for capital appreciation that we flip? Are we talking about buying completed apartments, houses, or office spaces to generate rental income? Or are we talking about buying land to either sell as is or subdivide into smaller tracts? Mike, give us a better idea of what you are talking about and recommending today.
Well, I'll say yes, yes, and more yes, because all of the scenarios you just mentioned are right. They're the right thing to do here. And it really depends on the person or the client, their needs and their expectations, as it does anywhere in the world. You want to focus on the client's needs, not yours. So all those approaches to purchasing real estate here have their advantages depending on what the person wants in the end. Pre-construction allows the buyer to have some time to pay off the home or condo while it's being built, and it gives you what I call instant equity once it's completed. As an example, I've purchased 3 places pre-construction of the years. I've been here, and they all turned over 60% once they were completed. So to turn that into real numbers, let's say I paid $99,000 for a pre-construction condo in Salinas at the time. This was a few years back. But I only paid $50,000 for that up front while it was being built over the 2.5-year period. Once it was done, I sold it in a month's time for $160,000. So and that was, just letting your money more or less accumulate there while they were doing the construction. Once it was sold, the demand was so high, it was very easy to sell. And then buying, say, for income, that's a great way to continue your cash flow. And you can use that while you're living here. And then buying land is a great idea for either holding or building a home for yourself or to resell. This way, if you're building for yourself, you get exactly what you want in a home. And if you're building to sell it, then you'll make a handsome profit at the time of sale. I've done this numerous times and it can return an excellent profit and still, which is important, be very fair to the person you're selling it to. You have to stay within the market or below the market in order to do that successfully. So bottom line, my recommendation is to buy something, anything on the coast, and you'll be glad that you did. My focus here is to make sure that people get what they want, not what I'm trying to sell them.
Mike, to be completely honest, I love nothing better than speaking with local real estate investors like yourself who can help best analyze deals for prospective buyers. Now, I'm going to hit you up with a 2-part question that I know everyone wants to know, and you have to give us a general range so we have some price points in mind. Here they are. Part 1. What would be the price range of what we are talking about? Maybe give us a starting price point at the low end to a final price point at the high end. And Mike, just to clarify, I am talking about total purchase price.
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm going to give you the straight scoop because you can get varied answers when you talk to numerous people. Okay, basically, the prices have gone up since I got here in 2005. But, the good news is they're still the best prices in all of Latin America that I've seen because I've been all over Latin America and I check prices regularly to make sure I can still say, hey, we have the best property prices you can get. And then you'll see that land will start at about $30 to $50 per square meter for something worth buying. You can buy it cheaper than that, but if you want something that you're going to want to build on or have the views, you're going to pay typically a minimum of $30 to $50 a square meter. And it can go as high as $200 a square meter, depending on the location, the surrounding market, things like that. So again, let's put that into real numbers. Let's say you buy 1,000 square meters on the beach. So that's a quarter of an acre, which is a really nice sized lot. You'll most likely pay something between $30,000 upwards to $200,000 for it. Again, depending on where it is and what beach it's on. If you were to go to our website at ecuadorproperties.com and clicked on the land tab, you would be able to get an idea of what I'm relaying here. And then we go home and land packages. They're typically start at about $100,000 to buy something, again, worth owning. You can find things for less than that. $100,000 is a good starting point to say have something you can move into. At times, you can still find something for $50,000 to $75,000, but you can bet you're going to need to do some kind of work, which isn't a bad thing, because just with a little extra time and money, you can fix it up and increase its value dramatically. So the average home price on our site is usually around $175,000 to $250,000. But that is for a home on a nice sized lot on the Pacific. Condos, they're great for the person that is not going to be here all the time. They can lock it and leave it with total peace of mind. It can also be used for rental property while they're not using it and have it pay for itself. Condos have a pretty wide price range depending on their size, the view that it has, the amenities that are offered in the building, etc. So condos can start as low as $49,000 with the beach view, but those are few and far between. But you will typically pay somewhere, again, between the $100,000 to $250,000 to get a really nice unit. The upper price range brings you those kind of places that will make you say, wow, when you walk inside. We have one stunning penthouse that's on the site right now, and it's in the upper range. It's furnished and has a big deck overlooking the Pacific. And when you get in there, it's like, oh, my gosh, it's super wow. So there you have it, a quick sample of the prices here in Ecuador.
Well, Mike, I'm going to hit you up with a part two. What would be the cost per meter? Again, maybe a starting price point at the low end and then a final price point at the high end.
Okay, covered that a little bit above. But your cost per meter, again, really depends on the area, of course. I mean, because you have areas that are very developed and areas that are developing. Okay, so the isolated properties can go as low as $1 per square meter, but let me really qualify that now. That is when you're, say, buying a large tract of land, say 50 hectares of land, and a hectare is 2.5 acres, so that would be 125 acres of land. A hectare is 10,000 square meters or 100,000 square feet. So if you were to buy 50 hectares at $1 a square meter, that's $500,000. And the catch there is sort of being able to find that much land and then negotiating a price like that, but it can definitely be done. And then once you have that much land, what's cool is you can divide it, you can sell it off and make way more than your investment back. Again, pay for your piece of paradise, so to speak. But let's go back to the typical purchase, the typical client I work with. Typically, you're going to see somewhere between $30 to $200 a square meter. The $200 square meter price would be in a very busy boardwalk location, a prime location where you'd get walked by traffic all the time. If you had a home there, you'd have an incredible view, things like that. The $30 per square meter properties are going to be more removed, more remote, maybe not have the amenities or things to do, because there's a couple of areas along the beach. They're beautiful. You're going to write a book. But if you want to go out at night and have a lot of the restaurants and the night spots, you'd have to travel a little bit.
And for listeners like me who are used to dealing in square feet, divide the number you hear by 10.76 or maybe just a flat 10 to keep it easy. And you get close enough numbers to get an idea of what Mike is referring to. Okay, Mike, this is a question that I like to call, what would grandma do? My grandma calls you up, says she has X amount of dollars to spend. You can't let my grandma down. Share with us 3 specific examples you would show her and explain why these make sense.
Okay, good question. Okay, typically I want to make sure what grandma wants to do with her piece of paradise first. Okay, so if it's for vacation or living in, then I would suggest a condo for her because it's really easy to lock and leave. As I mentioned earlier, condos are totally safe. Now, if grandma is used to having a home of her own, then I would suggest a gated community type townhouse or a home for her in one of those. That way they're very safe. Again, usually you'll find a large social network in this type of community. And then if grandma has a little Donald Trump in her, then I would suggest that she should buy land and build whatever she wants. And this can be a great way to actually make money on your piece of paradise. If grandma, say, has $300,000, that she saved away in her little sock, you could buy a piece of land and build a duplex or triplex on it and pay for her dwelling by selling off the other 2 units. I love to suggest this to people because it can be done, and we do it all the time, and it's a great way to pay for the properties that you're buying by just buying a large piece, subdividing it, and selling a portion off to pay for your home probably and your piece of land. Awesome way to approach that.
Mike, we are laser focused on specific areas of Playas. We know our starting price point. We have an idea of cost per meter. We have 3 specific examples which are good enough even for grandma. Now, let me ask you an obvious question. How do we buy? Do we need to come in with all cash, whether that's from our checking account, home equity line of credit, or retirement funds? Or can we come in with a certain percentage down and get local financing from a bank or credit union?
Okay. Well, just as in most places in the world, cash is king here. So when you're buying anything, for the most part, though, you will not find financing here from a bank or a credit union. And if you did, you would not like the interest rates. The Ecuadorians that get loans here pay a minimum of 11 to 15% for their mortgages. So that's not a very attractive rate. You know, most people are used to 3 and 4% in the States. And then there's times you can find in the pre-construction situations where the builder will carry you for the build-out period if they're building a condo or home. But usually they're not going to carry you for more than 5 years. So again, financing is very hard. You won't get it from the banks, and if you do get it, it'll be a short-term situation. Normally, you'll put a down payment, or earnest money via bank wire, and at closing, you pay off the purchase in full. This is our typical transaction. Someone buys a place for $100,000, for example, and puts $5,000 down as the earnest money. Then they pay $95,000 at the closing of the sale. And this can be anything from 2 weeks to months, depending on how quick the paperwork's brought together, the lawyers work together, and you get the transaction done. So that's the typical sale. It's typically cash. Oh, I just thought of something. This is really important because another thing about buying land here, in the past, there hasn't been an escrow company here. So we've just put together an escrow company using one of Ecuador's longest-standing trust companies. This is a first in Ecuador in that there are no escrow accounts anywhere prior to this new product that was just introduced by a company by the name of Fiducia. And I can give you that information later. They actually have a website. We designed the product, and we just use the typical, procedure for escrow that you'd see anywhere else in the world. And Fiducia has put this in their lineup of services. And this has an amazing twist to it. This escrow account pays you interest while they hold your money, and they hold it at 6% interest. So you can actually, their basic fee is $550 for their escrow service, but the interest that you make in your money while it's being held can typically pay for that fee and sometimes even pay you back money at the closing from the money they've held for you. So this is a huge step here for the industry.
Mike, anyone who has ever owned real estate can tell you, you need to have a money exit strategy in place even before you buy. It's something what I like to call, where's the cheddar? You are buying the property to do what with it to make some money. So, Mike, where's my cheddar?
Okay, I love the way you think. That's exactly what I tell folks when they buy. Just in case, let's look at your escape plan if needed one day. Exit strategies are something that most folks don't think of, and it's really important that they should. I let them know there are no guarantees, and never believe someone that says 100% that you can do this or you can do that one day in the future with your property. You never know. So my ultimate caveat to folks is if you get stuck with your purchase and have no way out of it, are you still okay? No other realtor tells people this because it's really important. I want to make sure our clients are not stretching their finances in order to buy something in paradise, because if they start getting stretched, it's not paradise anymore. What I can tell folks is that most likely, if they need to sell one day in the future, they are most likely going to make a handsome profit on their land, home, or their condo. I see this as a very strong market for at least the next 5 years. It's sort of like being in Costa Rica, say, 15 years ago, and most of us know what happened there with prices. They've all gone up dramatically over the last 15 years.
Mike, I have truly enjoyed this conversation and wanted to thank you for taking the time to share with us about Playas Real Estate. We have heard about your journey, why you chose Ecuador, exact areas of Playas to focus on, price points to look out for, specific examples good enough even for grandma, a money strategy to purchase, and then what we might do with it after the fact to make some cheddar. Unfortunately, it's time to say goodbye. But before we do, share with us easy ways to get a hold of you, any parting advice you might want to share, and then let's say goodbye.
All righty. We actually have 2 website domain names. One is EcuadorProperties.com. It's all one word, EcuadorProperties.com. And the other one, all one word, EcuadorHomesales.com. But both those domain names go to the same website. And then my email address to write me directly is redwolf3@juno.com. And I'll spell that for you. It's RED, like in dog, WULF, the number 3, at Juno, JUNO.com. So it's Red Wolf with a U instead of an O. And then my phone numbers, if you're here in Ecuador, you can call me at 099-11-42-354. If you're calling from the States to that number, you're going to need to dial 011-593-9911-42-354. I know it's a long number. And then I have a Magic Jack number, which is a really cool little device. It's a computer-based phone system. And that number is based out of Seattle, but I'm actually using it from here in Ecuador. So the number for that is 425-298-8019. And if you call that from the States or Canada, it's typically a free call for you, especially if you use your cell phone.
I have truly enjoyed this conversation, straight from Playas Ecuador to our earbuds, and I hope we can catch up again in 3 to 6 months.
Great. Taylor, I would love to talk to you again. Any of your listeners that have questions, please feel free to get hold of me. I'll definitely give them a straight scoop. And equally, it's been a pleasure, and I appreciate you asking me to be on your show. You guys have a great day.
I want to thank Mike once again for his awesome take being on the ground in Playas. I was completely floored by Mike's on-the-ground insight so much that we have an upcoming show devoted to more local, real estate-specific deals Mike believes you need to hear about right now. If you're listening to this podcast and want to grab Mike's contact details, links on buying or selling Playas real estate, or any other show notes, head on over to irelpodcast.com/4. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's episode and are giving away over $500 in free site upgrades to each and every property owner, agent, or developer who lists real estate on our site and gives us an honest iTunes review. In addition, for all listeners who don't own any real estate, instead, we'll provide an awesome resource guide that will give you amazing discounts to our most popular resources, including vacation rental sites, home exchange sites, house sitting sites, and much more. Just head on over to irelpodcast.com/4 for complete details.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up irelpodcast.com for more. That's irelpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.